Hello, Dumelang, and welcome to yet another exciting and thought-provoking episode of Motlhophi BUA, Voter Speak. And today we're going to be continuing on unpacking inclusivity for the 2024 general elections in Botswana. My name is Tumisa Motlhophi, the host for this session, and we're going to be looking at a specific issue which has to do with women in Botswana. And with the upcoming elections is to look at key issues that are affecting women in Botswana. So we're going to be looking at issues like participation in the political process, participation in the decision-making process, the electoral process, and also representation of women in positions of leadership. And to unpack this issue and to really delve into the depths of the issues that are experienced by women here in Botswana, I do have some guests, one of which is a young lady from Model Parliament Botswana, as well as a very familiar face that I'm going to be conversing with this afternoon. Allow for me to welcome you ladies to the studio.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Let me start off with you, Loago Mokhosi, a representative of Model Parliament Botswana.
Yes.
Maybe start by telling us about Model Parliament and what it does, its primary mandate, and what it primarily focuses on.
Okay, thank you. Firstly, Model Parliament Botswana is basically an initiative by Young Minds Africa, product also of a US embassy. Basically, the goal is to have more young women involved in political issues and just politics in general in Botswana. So the initiative, or the program rather, basically is like all young women, right, aged between 18 and 24, and we are simulating the Parliament of Botswana.
Okay.
So from executive, you have your members of parliament, you have your speaker of the National Assembly, and but the only difference now is that it's all women, and this is just to engage young women and try to enhance the interest in politics in Botswana.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have a familiar face. Mme o e leng gore ke motlotla thata ga go tla mo dikganyeng tse tsa bong ke ene o e leng gore o nna di eteletse ko pele. Mayor Elsie Alexander, she's the director of Putting Women First Trust. She's a gender activist. She's in issues of development. Malex, ra go amogelam.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on this show. Very important conversation.
Yes.
So good afternoon to the listeners. Good afternoon to people that are listening in different quarters.
Malex, I'm going to want to know a little bit more about Putting Women First Trust. Gore itebagantse segolobogolo leng e bereka le bomang pele re ka tsena mo kganyeng ya rona ya gompieno. Emma.
Okay, thank you so much. Putting Women First Trust is basically a development-oriented organization, but emphasis on gender and development, but also youth and development. It embraces the broader perspective of development, but tries and looks at the more qualitative issues in terms of where are women, where are youth, where are they participating, are there voices out there, are there machineries, are there structures, are there areas where we can say this gives them a platform to voice their issues, to voice their concerns, to voice their development recommendations. You know, it's not just about concerns.
Yes.
It's about them giving us a perspective to say, this program in agriculture, it's not okay because it does not necessarily address A, B, C, D. This program in the economy of economic empowerment is not okay.
Right.
General, but it does not necessarily embrace the particular concerns of women and youth.
Right.
So we do a lot of analysis of the development policies and programs, but we also encourage young people to be proactive and speak for themselves. Because as you say, I've been there for 30, 40 years,
right,
promoting issues of gender and development, starting at the Ministry of Labour and Home Affairs, where I was the Director of Women's Affairs Department. So a long time we've been trying to get the attention of government and as well as the other stakeholders. And we are fortunate for a long period of time. We were supported very well by the donor community. I see USAID is here, and the EU as well, and others that are in Botswana, have supported us very well. Because, if you look at the budget of the Gender Affairs Department right
Ga ke
now.
batle go tsena mo go tsone thata, Alex. Ke a utlwa gore
I'll
go
just
ha-
give you an example.
You are on a roll.
I know. When you
Emma.
look at the budget
Emma.
of the Gender Affairs Department right now, it is the most minimal that you can get. And if we don't have partners out there that can support us, it's very difficult for us to make a difference to the extent where you get people to support women and youth to be part of the development agenda.
Right.
Thank you.
And
I'm
talking
on the
about
roll.
partners,
Yes.
this election podcast series is brought to you by Bokongo, the Botswana Council of Non-Governmental Organizations, in partnership with Duma FM and supported by the Embassy of the United States of America in Gaborone. So, Alex has really delved into some of the issues that I'm going to want to get more insight into, from maybe a very interesting thing that I'm seeing here, generational representation. That is one of the key issues that I'm going to be looking at this afternoon. But you can join in on the conversation by sending a WhatsApp on 76281885. We will be able to read your WhatsApp messages live, and you feel free to ask any question. Let's continue. Maybe let me start with you, Loago. Let's talk about, maybe paint us a picture from your point of view. Le ba ileng gore o nna o ntse o tla o bua le bone ka seemo sa bomme mo lehatsheng la Botswana, gore le ka se tlhalosa se ntse jang, ra bona gore goromente o le ka ha le kang teng, mme ke dumela gore go santse go na le ha go tlhaelang teng. So paint us a picture of what things are looking like in the build-up to the 2024 elections.
Of course, thank you. Definitely, I'd like to say, being a first-time voter, obviously there's been discussions and a lot of, debates around like how politics have been going, especially for women, and how politics have been, impacting women in our country, And I like to believe that one of the main things that are always highlighted is the lack of representation and participation of women in politics, And there are a lot of programs and initiatives that we see that are trying to bring women, especially young women, into politics. But we really want to understand that, okay, what is causing the hesitation, what is causing the resistance, you know what I'm saying? And from different levels of, citizens, and from your senior citizens to, my generation, you come to realize that a lot of the things are in terms of feeling like their voices are not heard, feeling like their needs are not being met, that although the legislation exists that is set to somewhat protect us as women, that is set to somewhat empower us as women, is set, it's not entirely implemented in a way that encourages women in, in terms of empowerment, in terms of economic empowerment, And so really it's just about like, as we go towards elections, how are we saying that the government and political parties are trying to change that? This is the change that we're saying as women we need to see, we need our voices heard. And these programs and initiatives that have been brought to us, we're saying this is our feedback. This is what we want now. This is how we feel like, okay, you've tried in this aspect, and we appreciate the efforts, but we need improvement in this aspect, Yeah. So,
Alex, ke letsa go utlwa mo go wena gore wena ga o lebella seemo se bomme ba iphitlhelang ba le mo go sone, the realities of women in Botswana, re lebile dingwaga tse o ntseng o tla o itebagantse le dikgang tse tsa bomme ka teng, matshwenyego a e leng gore le ntse le na le yone, issues of representation in political positions, in positions of leadership. Le ka tlhalosa jang seemo se e leng gore re kopana le sone mo nakong ya gompieno?
Thank you so much. I think we need to go back to the historical perspective in terms of where we come from. Very important, because history has shown us that because of the social cultural situation, where we are, culture determines a lot of who you are, What can you do? Which borders you can overcome, or which challenges you can overcome. So historically, we've had a situation where there's been a lot of inequality between women and men. Yeah? From a cultural perspective, economic perspective, and political perspective. In fact, politics for women right now is something that they are traversing or they are trying to enter, but there's so many obstacles because of that background that we have. Now, it's not just Botswana, it's Africa as a whole, it's the world, in fact, as a whole, that are still struggling with getting a lot of women within the political space. So globally, and if you've gone to some of the global meetings, you'll find that the issues are so similar and so vivid to say that women are still at a level where they are struggling to break the those kind of barriers to get where they want to get. And I can imagine how the young women feel, you know, in terms of just as we still struggle as the senior women. But I want to recognize that there has been a lot of changes that have taken place over the decades where policies have been put in place, programs have been put in place to facilitate the involvement of women and men. And you know, we've moved from women and development to gender and development.
Yes.
Because we feel that together we can make a bigger difference as women and men. Because we need to sensitize women, we need to sensitize men, we need to get both of them as partners to see how best we can move the agenda forward.
Malex, ke ratile thata o bua ka kana ke kgatlhegetse ntlha e neng o e bua ya ditso gore gongwe di na le seabe mo se leng gore re bona se diragala kana se ntseng se tla se diragala. So talking about history, talking about cultural attitudes, talking about social norms, I want to understand from you to what end are they influencing the status of women? Ka ha o se tlhalosang ka teng mo nakong ya gompieno. A di santse di na le se leng gore se kana tsone dilo tseo a di na le ka ha di amang ka teng kgatelopele ya bomme ka ha wena o bona dilo di ntse ka teng.
And I think Mayo can say a lot to that effect as well. Ke how sika hela gore tota bomme ba tswa ko kae, borre ba tswa ko kae, yeah? Hape, if you look at how we've struggled to get recognized, you'll just see that the terrain is still not level, or the environment is still not conducive. But, as I say, there has been a lot of effort that has been put into it by civil society, by government, by other organizations, supported by our donor community as well in Botswana and other places, the United Nations, the African Union, etc., SADC, you know, we've got the SADC Gender Development Program. There's been a lot of push for inclusion in the development space by different organizations.
Right.
So I think the problem is attitudes, right? Our attitudes. As you know, attitudes is a mindset. It takes a long time for attitudes to be changed. But if you work through it consistently and engage men, engage women, because women are not necessarily also as supportive as they should be for another woman maybe getting into a particular space, because it's an attitudinal issue. But we have moved quite a bit in terms of saying, and I think in the political, if you look at the political space, the women in politics have really pushed the agenda to say that we are here, we are the voters. Like the youth are now saying, we are here, we are the voters. So recognize that we have a role to play in this playing field of politics.
Yes. Malex, ntlha eo ke tlo go boela go yone. Ke batla gore e re ke santse ke tsweletse ke gatetse pele. Wena bo sala wa kanya ka the correlation perhaps between bone bo mme ba ileng gore gone jana ba khona go hitlhella maemo a boeteledipele gore a mme gone ga ba setse ba tshegeditse maemo a go nna jalo a ba ileng gore ga ba ise ba hitlhelle ba khona go roba mo boeteledipeleng bone ba go nna jalo. That is to say that are we seeing now an agenda, a purposeful agenda that has to do with gender sensitive policies for example. When talking about policies, ke batla go lebella wena loago o le monana o le moithuti gore do you feel that there's a certain, you know, satisfactory level of inclusivity gore a la akarediwa le bomme adolescents le bomme ba santseng ba gola mo sepolotiking ka gore sepolotiki ke gone ko ditharabololo ka bontsi di tswang teng. Gore to what extent do you feel involved in the mainstream political system le bomme a mela le utlwa e ka re dilo di a hetoga ko moding le ntse le tsamaela ko pele?
That's a very good question, and I'll give my very honest opinion. I don't think so.
Okay.
Of course, I will acknowledge that there are a lot of programs, there are a lot of initiatives that are trying their level best to bring young women into politics, right? But I do feel as though in the efforts to do so, it's not entirely in a way that I can say is also making us as young women, eager to want to be involved, because you get there and you are told things like, oh no, but politics is a very dirty game. There's a lot of barriers and obstacles that you are yet to experience, especially if you're a woman, and it somewhat brings in that level of fear to say, okay, I'm very interested in this, particular thing. I'm interested in politics, but I go in with the fear of the fact that I'm a woman, the fact that my gender still has impact in my involvement in politics, that me just being of a woman is a great impact, and it's something of significance that I have to be cautious about as I enter into the space, and that's something that you think even in today's age wouldn't necessarily be a topic of conversation, but it is. It is, and that's something we need to ask ourselves as young women, as the government, as civil society, that why is it still a thing, that the fact that I'm a woman, it has to mean something in politics. It has to mean that I have to be cautious about, certain obstacles that I will experience in such a space, And the truth of the matter is, whether you're a woman or a man, politics do affect you. They affect your livelihood. They affect the way you live your life. You know what I'm saying? And we need to get to a point where issues are addressed without it feeling like an attack on either gender. You know what I'm saying? To say that we recognize that women are experiencing this and this issues, but as a civil society, as a government, what policies and strategies are we implementing to be able to address these issues collectively? We're not just leaving it to the women to address their needs and their issues. We're also involving the men. We're also involving those in male-dominated spaces and saying, how can we make this a more conducive space for young women and older women who are trying to, penetrate into certain spaces that, are known to be male-dominated, These are issues that you look at and you say to yourself that, okay, as a young woman, very eager to be a part of politics and very eager to be involved in certain spaces that, like Alex said, would be considered breaking barriers. What is it that is being done to create the space for me to feel like it's a space that I can tap into, Yeah. Okay. So
Motlhophi BUA, Voter Speak, wa bua Loago Mokgosi go tswa ko Model Parliament Botswana. Lo ena o ka nna le seabe mo puisong ya rona, o ka romela molaetsa ko 76281885, a WhatsApp message wa ileng gore o tla gorogela ka kwano, re tla o bala ga ile gore o ka tswana le potso kana ka kgelo e leng gore o eletsa go elatlhela mo puisong ya rona. Ga re tswela Alex, ntlha ele neng ke eleditse gore bo ka boela go yone. Ra bona jaanong gore go na le maiteko. Ono a supa jalo gore nya maiteko a teng at central government level, at local government level. Me ra bona gore tautona Dr. Mokgweetsi re ke a retso masisi ona go lebega tsere tshwetso ya gore o tla itebaganya le one kgannye ya go ntsi hatsa kana go tlhatlosa bomme ba hitlhella maemo a rileng a boetapele ke ra ke ha ke lebella go BURS metelepile ko ga re lebella Attorney General's Office, ga re lebella the Commissioner of Police, le di CEO ya la ka bontsi ja tsone ba di parastatals o tla itlhela ele bomme. Potso ye leng gore ke batla go e tlhaloganya ke gore e be go diragala jana is there a trickle-down effect? Do some of the things that you wish to see happen because of the fact that go na le bomme ba e leng gore jaanong ba di goga ko tlhogong kana ba mo maemong one ya, that is to say the existing policies a di a hetoga jaanong gore re utlwe di itebaganya le tsone dikgwetlho tse e leng gore bomme ba kopana le tsone?
It's a loaded question because, as you know, change takes time. When you see that women are promoted to positions of power, very good, positive, I think, step from the higher authorities like the president. But you'll find that we still have a lot of social cultural issues or attitudes within organizations where, even though that happens, it is so slow to change. But as I said at the beginning, I want to admit that change has taken place. Change has taken place. And I think by the president doing what he does, and we'd like to give him credit for that, because we also say, wow, it has been quite, in the last couple of years that it's been there, you've seen a difference where he's promoted women to positions of power. And that makes a difference, because the young woman, the little girl, when she sees this, will aspire and say, wow, even I can become a permanent secretary, or I can become a CEO, or I can become an ambassador. Even from an ambassadorial perspective, in terms of them going abroad,
Right.
We've had a lot of women in those positions. So I think it's a good, positive move by the president. But we need to do also a lot of sensitization in the community, because we are not all at the same level where we would appreciate to say that yeah? It's those days where you said, "Hori, bokgoni hela e tswa mo go rre, not mo go mme. Mme o tshwantse go sala hela mo kitcheneng." Those days are gone by. They are really gone by. And I think we are getting to a level where we need to interrogate a little bit more and debate and sensitize people to say, whether male or female or woman or man, all of us have skills, knowledge, can make a difference to the development of Botswana.
Right.
And I think we are seeing it, as I say, with the event of being able to see this movement of women getting to decision-making positions. In my days, there were very few. Now we can see that there's a big change
Right.
coming up.
Jaanong kana re tsamaela ko ditlhophong tsa ngwaga wa 2024. Ke lebile dipalo tse e leng gore ne re di hitlheletse in terms of the first registration exercise. And dipalo di supa gore they're about what, 764,000 I think it's 480 or so people that vote that registered to vote. And of that number, re hitlela 54.1% e le bomme. Ke dumela gore ngwaga le ngwaga re nna re ntse re lemoga yone kgannye ya gore bomme ba nna ba ntse ba tshegetsa dipalo tse di hetang tsa borre. Gongwe ka lebella the population ya rona e bore no, maybe it's attributed to the population and how women generally they form larger numbers than men. Me jaanong, what I'm trying to get at here ke gone gore re bona bomme gangwe le gape ba ipega ko matlhophelong kwa, me jaanong maduo e be go lebega e ka re a hapana le dikeletso tsa bone. What is happening there? Please enlighten me, because tlhaloganya me ntha gore if there is a great turnout and batho ba tsama ba tlhaloganya dikgang tsa bone go tshwana, ga se gore ba ka ikopanya mo mogopolong gore ba bone gore ba hitlhella jang se ba eletsang go bona se diragala, one of which is what you mentioned, Loago, an increase in the representation of women and in political positions, and by extension in positions of leadership. So I do believe you're a first time voter.
Yes.
You're going to have a very significant insights to share.
Yes.
Malex, ngwaga go ngwageng kana dingwaga tsone tsa ditlhopha re ntse re bona the election cycle, re nna re kopana le kgang e tshwanang maduo e be a nna ntse a tshwana.
And if you look at currently, because it's happening now, yeah, where all political parties are nominating their candidates for the elections in, hopefully it will be, people say September, October, say October. You ask yourself the question, but why is there always a struggle? Yeah, as you say, things have changed. There's their gender policies, they have gender policies in their parties, but it's always still a struggle for women to get to a level where they can compete with men, and they can, to become a candidate, to stand for elections, whether MP, whether councillor, or whatever position they have.
Do you think so? Just to interject there before you go too far from that point.
Yeah.
Do you actually believe that? Is that the general perception that a woman candidate is just as strong as her
men.
male counterpart?
Yeah. I'm coming there.
Em.
I'm coming there. What I'm saying is that and the environment has been created for that to happen. But we still have nuances. We still have issues that are informed by history, informed by culture, that are informed by attitudes, that are informed by people's perception of women and men. Kabokoni. There's still that, in our society. But at the same time, I want to believe, since Manasha and them's days, who were the first women that came into the political space and did very well, there are examples of women that have done very well. Boma Saretse, Boma Nasha, and people like that. Ma Benson, they've shown society that Renali Boko. It is probably within your structures, your political structures, where there is contestation between women and men, right? And you may find that, and my observation is that, when it now comes to elections or support for who should be standing, go Gaborone North, go Gaborone South, go Kai, in the other constituencies, you'll find that there's still a contestation where maybe more men will support the men instead of supporting the woman. So you have to be strong as a woman, you have to fight, you've got to make sure that you understand that this is a very difficult terrain. But you must go out there and say that I am as capable and as qualified and as whatever as any man to stand for this constituency. And you lobby.
How do you reconcile Malexi? How do you reconcile the observation ya gore bomme are not supporting bomme ba bang? Ke kganye le gore na re kopana le yone. Re nna re utlwa dikgang tsa gore bomme ka bo bone ba ngapana. Ke bone ba ileng gore mo gongwe ba kgona gore ebe ba kgoreletsa mme o mongwe gore a tsamaele ko pele. So that tells me, from what I'm saying, hala bopagana, hala tshwaragana, gale a tlhakanna mono we kutlwang di bua ka gone.
I think for me that's a perception. It's a perception out there. And I want to believe that, I don't believe that that is the situation, that women are not supporting each other. I think there are other, as I said, other challenges within the political structures, within the political terrain that contribute to this inequality within politics. If I just look at the current situation, for example, as I say, there's always contestation or there's always a big challenge for women to get in. But you'll find that there is movement towards that. The terrain is not easy. The terrain is very, very difficult. And I think as a woman, you go in there, you must know you need to push. You need to advocate. You need to make sure that you get your supporters to support you when you get to primary elections.
Right.
So you can't just sit and think you'll be nominated or you'll be supported. You've got to fight for it. You've got to work on it. You've got to change mindsets. You've got to say to them, I'm as capable as anybody else in this terrain to represent you.
Right.
Yeah. And it's the broader society that we also need to look at, the voter.
Movement does not necessarily translate to progress. We can agree on that, right?
Indeed.
As a first-time voter, what are some of the issues or some of the expectations that you are looking at political parties, you're looking at the candidates that are standing for office vying for office to address within their manifestos, within their commitments, the kind of posture ye leng gore o batla go bona ba batla go go wena o le first time voter o le mme gape ba tla ba isupa mo go lona?
Yes, thank you. Like Ma Alex is saying, that for a lot of women, it's not easy, right? And my expectation as a first-time voter is that we should no longer still be having the conversation of it not being easy for a woman to enter into the space of politics. While I agree that change is not, it's not fast. It's something that's an ongoing process. You know what I'm saying? But I do believe that there are certain implementations that can be done to make it less, less harsh. I think, like my Alex mentioned, the social and cultural norms and ideologies that just because a woman means femininity, then it's somewhat like softness and incapability of standing in leadership and all of those things. You know what I'm saying? We need to break those barriers. We need to change our mindsets as a civil society, as a government, and, just move away from that. We're saying we want change. We're saying we want more women representing us and participating in politics. My expectation is that the environment will be more conducive for women as we enter into elections. My expectation is that women will be more compelled to, participate in community leadership initiators, and also just politics in general. Like you did mention, that 54% of registered voters are females, and I'd like to believe this is it's a stepping stone. You know what I mean? It's to say that, as women we feel more courage, we feel more hope towards issues being addressed, our issues being addressed, and also just representation, us entering into spaces that we never thought would be able to enter, historically speaking,
Right.
And this is just to say for me that, like, as a first-time voter, I commend the change, definitely. I say that it shouldn't just stop here. More needs to be done. There's definitely a lot that we need to do as, a country as a whole to make this easier for women. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that, like, it should be like spoon feeding or whatever, but it should be, we shouldn't have to work like 10 times harder than, the men in such spaces, you know what I'm saying? Simply because we are women,
o bua dilo tse ke batlang gore ke di latedise ebile ga ntse o bua jaana ke na le go akanya ka kganya people with disabilities, bana le bogole mo gongwe ba ile go ratle re bue le bone makgotla ile go ratle re bue le lone bana ba bua gore nothing for us without us. Ke kganye le gore bana ba e bua go mo jaanong ke batla gore ga re go lebella dikgang tsa bomme, some of the existing policies that affect you negatively, right? Or some of the or policies that are not even, they're not existent. Ga di o gotlhelelele. Ga re bua ka di policies tse ne gore gongwe di itebagantse kana melao e ne gore itebagantse le abortion, for example.
Yes.
How are men really going to capture the essence of such conversation? Ga re bua ka dikgang tsa menstruation, for example. Ketelepele ya borre a tota e tla tlhalosa sentle kana e tla kgona go ipaa mo diemong tse e leng gore bomme ba kopana le tsone ka go atle go te setlhako se hisa morwadi ya sone. Jaanong ke batla gore kgang eo re e lebelele gore a mme gone dikgang tsa lona di tla utlwala. Your vote, does it have a significant impact on the policies that affect you directly? A ke se tumelo ya gago e se buang ga o tsena ko elehelo na matlhopelo, Alex?
a very tough one. But anyway, you know what? As she says, it is as I said, it's a contestation, okay? You have to be very strong to say, I'm here to make a difference, I've got the capability, and never ever think that you don't have the ability to make a difference and to become an MP, to become a minister, to become a councillor. So we need to ensure that whatever we advocate for should happen in practice and should happen in the different structures that we have, whether politics, economy, civil society, etc., etc. So I think it really depends on all of us, women and men, boys and girls, young women and young men, to make that difference. Because we all are aware that Botswana is one of those countries where level of education is very high amongst women and men. Yeah? So there shouldn't really be a major challenge to see the reality that both of us, and in some areas, in fact, women do better than men, you know, in certain areas of education, of the education sector. So it is a mindset. And, you know, changing mindsets takes generations sometimes. But it's not an impossibility. So there need to be continuous engagement, continuous conversations within the political parties, within civil society, within other organizations, the private sector. I mean, the private sector have also moved quite a bit where we have a lot of women as head of organizations. So I think we have an environment where we can make a bigger difference. But you need to now ask yourself the question, in politics, I want to come back to politics, who are in the leadership? Who are those people that really have the power to make a difference? As you say, yeah, our president, Masisi, has decided that he deliberately decided that he's now going to put women in key positions of power. That should happen all over. You make a decision as a political party and say, why, at this point in time, for example, why can't we have a woman stand for a president? Why? What stops us from saying we have a woman candidate who wants to stand for elections as president? But it's a terrain where you really will have to say as a woman, I am going to go in there and I'm going to stand. But she needs the support. She needs that support.
Kantelo buile ka bo Manasha, Maseretse, Mavense. Ke bo me ba ileng gore ba khonne go itlhella ko ileng gore ba le bantsi ne ba sa sologela gore bo me ba tla itlhella teng. Ga re simolle pele gongwe ka seemo sa gore gongwe ga Tautona seo le mothusa Tautona seo e bo go ka tsengwa mme gone ho gore letsatsi le lengwe hela 1.5 days e ba bile ya go te excellency se mamma. Go mo a gagwe go ha matlhasedi ya gore nyame gone go ka diragala it could sow the seed e leng gore mo isa gongwe ka go etla motho gore e ba ka akanya ka tselentse jang. Ke bona nako ya rona ya mo monega ke batla gore ke tle ke ame kganya ka ke utlwa e ka re le bua dikgang tse di tshwanang. There's a lot of convergence in what you're saying. Me ke batla go tlhaloganya gore is the intergenerational dialogue happening on the ground to ensure gore ga re ntse re bua jana ka mmaru re mmogo mo se leng gore re se lebile o ska itlhela wena o tsere tsela e sele Malex le ene le ba ileng gore ke ba dingwaga tsa ga Malex cohort ya gago ba tsere tsela e sele. How are we facilitating that? How are we ensuring that there's harmonization, there's coordination in that which we want to see happen?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say the intergenerational dialogue is very important, one, because it helps us bridge the gap of the needs of women who are older and us younger women, you know, because it also helps us address issues that face both older and younger women, issues like gender-based violence and so on, you know. And this is very important because you come to realize that our needs are important in all stages, you know what I'm saying? These are the things that we need to address now because they will affect us even in future, you know. And so to bridge that gap, to have those dialogues, to me is something that I feel like we really need to tap into more. And I'd like to believe a lot of organizations, the government as well, like are doing their best to bring out initiatives and programs. Just like Ma Alex has mentioned that her organization works with young people, and these things are important because they help us, have an understanding of the historical aspect of politics. It helps us understand how far we come from, you know what I'm saying, in terms of politics, and as women, how far we come, in terms of certain policies and strategies and how they've been implemented in our country. And, yeah. So I genuinely feel like this dialogue, it's important. We need to tap more into it, especially in addressing issues affecting women, whether young or senior. And, I just feel like it starts with understanding the needs of young women and understanding the needs of the senior citizens, and then trying to bridge the gap.
Okay. Malex, le a kopana le banana kana ba ileng gore they are of a younger generation.
Irra. No, there's been a lot of movement in the intergenerational conversation space in the last 5 or more years. Yeah. And as she says, it's very critical. We have to do that. But we are also saying, I come from for lack of a better word, from the old school. You understand? But at the same time, I want to understand where the young woman is in terms of their issues, because some of the issues they have, I may not necessarily understand them the way they do. So the push, the advocacy should come from the young women. The advocacy for youth involvement in different spaces should come from the youth. I can't speak on behalf of the youth, but I can assist them. Identify the issues so that they can, and also train them in terms of what we do in terms of the intergenerational, is create awareness, train, give capacity, give skills, so that the young people can basically push their own agenda. Because we cannot do it on their behalf.
Right.
They've got to do it. We fought for decades to get where we are as women. And we've achieved quite a lot. We've achieved a lot and been able to get rid of some of the challenges that we have. But they are still there. So the young people and the young women should become very proactive,
right,
and basically challenge whatever they think is not necessarily happening or it's not in their favor. It's making it more difficult for them to get to those spaces. Like politics. They should be in the forefront. They should be there. Young women should be there now and say, I'm willing to stand for elections in this constituency or in this council ward. They must come out and challenge that space.
Right. Jaaka re tla go bokhutlong jwa puisong ya rona ke eletsa go lebisa potso e tshwanang potso ya gore what needs to happen, what key priorities need to be understood by candidates that are vying for office, the incoming government, the build up to the 2024 general elections. Essentially, what would make this period a transformative one for women's issues, their trials and tribulations, dikgang tse le tlang le ntse le tla le di bua ke eng se e leng gore tota se tla hetola selebego sa diemo tse bomme ba kopana le tsone mo nakong ya gompieno.
Okay. What I definitely think needs to be done, especially from candidates, is that they need to engage the civil society more, especially with women. Have women in communities and hear them out, hear their issues, and hear what they have to say about the policies and strategies currently in place, and what possible solutions, what possible suggestions or changes that they feel can be made towards these policies and strategies. Have the civil society somewhat feel a part of the change process. You know what I'm saying? And we also need, I'd like to believe we need more public awareness. I do feel the advocacy is there. It exists. It's a lot. There are so many programs, there are so many initiatives, but I feel like the reason why most of them tend to not be as successful is because of lack of public awareness. How involved are schools in involving young women and men and young girls and boys in politics? How involved are schools in these things? How involved is the workplace in industries involved in all of this? Because at the end of the day, like I said earlier, politics affect all of us. They affect all our livelihood. You know what I'm saying?
Ke sa go kgaupetse me ke lebile nako gore le one ile ke go leboge lwa go mokgosi from Model Parliament Botswana. Ma Alex potso ke eo e le gore re tla wetsa ka yona.
It's a huge issue in terms of, one, socialization of boys and girls and women and men, especially boys and girls, and I'm glad you mentioned the schools. At the household level, in the communities, in whatever spaces they are, we need to do a lot of socialization, re-socialization of the roles and responsibilities of boys and girls and women and men in our society. Number one, there's a lot of education still needs to be done. Number two, we need to get the political parties to understand that without having a substantive representation of women and young people in parliament and in cabinet, it is not going to happen to the extent where we want it to happen. In others, those voices are extremely important. You cannot speak on my behalf. I need to be at the table of the decision-making process. So we need, hopefully we'll see now with the elections coming, a lot more push from young people to be part of this process. A lot more push for women to be part. Don't vote, why are you voting for men instead of voting for a woman? If a woman is there. And it's also about capability. It's not just voting for a man or for a woman. You've got to vote for those capable people that can go into parliament and go into cabinet to represent us. So I think there needs to be a lot of push and pressure and advocacy for both young people and women to push the agenda and say, we are here to stay, we are part of the society, and we want to be represented at the highest level of the political terrain or of the development terrain. So there's a lot that needs to be done. Now, talking about issues, HIV/AIDS, more women are affected than men and girls. Yeah? GBV is a major challenge. It happens in political parties, by the way. GBV, not happening in the general society. It happens within the political space. It happens within other spaces of our society. So those are some of the social issues that we also need to look at. And of course, the contradictions between customary law and codified law. You know, there's lots of contradictions. Bo meko de khaolo ba santse ba na le a belief gore tota customary law is something that they struggle with because they are disadvantaged by some of the customary laws. But we need to get them to challenge that as well in terms of equality. So therefore, there are certain things. And finally, I just want to say that the resources.
Yes.
You can't make a difference unless you have resources to travel the length and breadth of this country to do the education. So the human and financial resources and other technical and supportive institutions are extremely important. But my belief finally is that collectively, collectively, we will make a bigger difference. So there also needs to be that partnership, that collective thinking and attitude to say both women and men, because we need both of us, women and men, can get us to a level where some of these issues we are talking about are no longer there.
Right.
You need both of us.
Emma.
Thank you.
Me LC Alexander, Director of Putting Women First Trust, a gender activist. Thank you so very much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. Anytime. When you need me, just call me.
Ke ka hare wetsang ka teng thulaganyo ya tsatsi la gompieno ya Motlhophi BUA Voter Speak, and this is a program that is brought to you by Bokongo in partnership with Duma FM and with the support of the Embassy of the United States of America in Gaborone. Ke na Tumisa Mote. We'll meet next week as we delve into more issues of inclusivity for the 2024 general elections, and we're going to be looking at the LGBTQI plus community. So make sure that you're there so that you can also share your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Leboga.